You wake up in the morning, and before you even get out of bed, you can already feel it. That heaviness, that strange pressure sitting in your stomach like something didn't finish digesting the night before. Your belly feels tight, not painful, not sharp, just uncomfortable, like your body is holding on to something it shouldn't. So you do what you've been told is healthy. You reach for your probiotic every morning. Same routine, same hope. Because somewhere along the way, someone convinced you that the answer to your gut problems was simple. Just add more good bacteria and everything would fall back into place. And for a while, you believed it was working. But then the bloating came back. The gas, the unpredictable digestion. The days where you feel completely fine, and the next day, your stomach turns against you for no clear reason. And deep down, there's a quiet question you haven't fully asked yet. If I'm doing everything right, why am I still feeling like this? Here's the part no one tells you. It's not that you're doing nothing. It's that you might be doing the wrong thing over and over again, expecting a different result. Because your gut is not a simple machine where you can just add something and fix it. It's an ecosystem. And right now, that ecosystem may be working against you. You see, after the age of 50, something begins to change inside your body. Not suddenly, not dramatically, but slowly, quietly. The diversity of your gut bacteria starts to decline. The protective species, the ones that used to keep everything balanced, begin to disappear. And when they fade, something else takes their place. Not all at once, not in a way you can feel immediately. But little by little, the environment inside your gut shifts, and here's where things start to go wrong. Because once that balance is disrupted, the issue is no longer just about not having enough good bacteria. The real problem becomes this. The environment inside your gut is no longer friendly, even to the good bacteria you're trying to add. Think about that for a moment. You could be taking the highest quality probiotic on the market, billions of live bacteria, the best strains, the best formulation. But if the environment inside your gut is hostile, they don't stay, they don't grow, they don't fix anything. It's like planting seeds in soil that's already damaged. You can keep adding more seeds every single day, but nothing changes. And that's why so many people find themselves stuck in this frustrating cycle, trying harder, buying better supplements, following stricter diets, and still waking up every morning with the same discomfort, the same uncertainty, the same quiet frustration. And then, someone tells you something that sounds almost too simple, that maybe the issue isn't what you're missing, maybe it's what's already there, that shouldn't be. A layer, a buildup, something forming inside your gut that you can't see, can't feel directly. But that changes everything. You might have heard it mentioned before. Sometimes it's called bad bacteria, sometimes it's described as imbalance, and sometimes people use a more complicated word, biofilm. It sounds technical, maybe even exaggerated, but the idea behind it is simple. Certain bacteria don't just live inside your gut. They organize, they protect themselves, they create conditions where they can survive, even when everything else around them changes. And once that happens, your gut is no longer just out of balance. It becomes resistant to change, which means all the small things you've been doing, the yogurt, the supplements, the clean eating, they help a little, but they don't go deep enough to shift the system. And that's the moment where most people get stuck, because they're trying to fix the symptoms without ever changing the environment. And when the environment doesn't change, nothing truly improves. So the real question isn't, what supplement should I take next? The real question is, what kind of environment am I creating inside my own body? Every single day. Because your gut doesn't respond to one thing. It responds to everything. What you eat, how you sleep, how you move, how you handle stress. All of it shapes the world inside you. And if that world becomes unfriendly, no amount of good bacteria will be enough to fix it. That's the truth most people never hear. And it's the reason why so many people keep trying and keep feeling stuck. But here's where things start to shift. Because once you understand this, you stop looking for quick fixes and you start asking a different kind of question. Not what can I add, but what do I need to change so my body can start working the way it used to? And that question changes everything. And this is where it becomes uncomfortable. Because what's happening in your gut doesn't stay in your gut. At first, it looks harmless. A little bloating after meals, a bit of gas. Maybe your digestion feels slower than it used to. Nothing alarming. Nothing that would make you run to a doctor. So you ignore it. You adjust. You live with it. But inside your body, something much bigger may already be unfolding. Because when the balance of your gut starts to shift, it doesn't just affect digestion, it starts affecting your entire system. Your gut lining, the thin barrier that separates what's inside your digestive tract from your bloodstream, is supposed to be tightly controlled, selective, protective. It decides what gets in and what stays out. But when that environment becomes inflamed, when harmful bacteria begin to dominate, that barrier starts to weaken, not all at once, not dramatically, but slowly. Small gaps begin to form, and through those gaps, things that were never meant to enter your bloodstream start slipping through. Toxins, fragments of bacteria, inflammatory signals, and your body reacts the only way it knows how. It fights. Your immune system activates. Inflammation spreads, not just in your gut, but everywhere. In your joints, where stiffness begins to feel like just aging. In your brain, where that foggy, unfocused feeling starts to become your new normal. In your energy levels, where no amount of sleep seems to fully restore you. And the most dangerous part? It doesn't feel like one big problem. It feels like a collection of small ones, things you explain away, things you normalize, things you tell yourself are just part of getting older. But they're not random, they're connected. Because your gut is not just where food is digested, it's where your immune system is trained, where inflammation is regulated, where signals are sent to your brain, your metabolism, your entire body. And when that system is out of balance, everything else starts to drift with it, quietly, gradually, until one day you realize something has changed, and you can't quite trace it back to where it started. That's what makes this so dangerous. Not because it's sudden, but because it's silent. And by the time most people start looking for answers, they've already been dealing with the consequences for years. So now the question becomes even more important. If the problem isn't just what you're missing, and it's not just about adding more good bacteria, then what is actually driving this imbalance in the first place? What is creating an environment inside your gut that allows the wrong things to grow and prevents the right things from coming back? Because once you understand that, you stop guessing, and you finally start seeing what's really going on beneath the surface. Let me be very clear with you. Your gut is not broken, and it does not need to be flushed. That idea has been oversimplified to the point where it becomes misleading, because your gut is not a dirty pipe that needs cleaning. It is a living ecosystem. Trillions of bacteria working together, competing, adapting, communicating. And when something goes wrong inside that system, you don't fix it by trying to wipe everything out. You fix it by restoring balance. This is where most people get it wrong. They think in extremes. Bad bacteria versus good bacteria, so they try to kill one and add more of the other. But biology doesn't work like that, because many of the bacteria labeled as bad are not inherently harmful. They become a problem only when they grow out of proportion. And when that happens, it's not because they're stronger, it's because the environment allowed them to dominate. Now, let's talk about probiotics, because this is where a lot of confusion comes in. Probiotics are not useless. They can help. There is solid evidence showing they support digestion, especially after antibiotics or in certain gut conditions. But here's the truth most people are not told. Probiotics are not a permanent solution. They are temporary visitors. Most of the bacteria you take in through a capsule do not stay in your gut long term. They pass through. They may provide short-term benefits. Do not rebuild your microbiome on their own. And if the environment inside your gut is still unfavorable, they cannot establish themselves, which means you can take them every single day and still feel like nothing is really changing. Now let's address the other myth. The idea that you can flush out bad bacteria in 24 hours, that you can drink something, take something, and suddenly reset your gut. That is not how human physiology works. If it were that simple, every gut disorder would already have a one-step cure. But it doesn't, because your microbiome is not something you erase. It's something you influence, gradually, consistently, over time. Certain compounds, including some found in spices, have antimicrobial or anti-inflammatory properties. That part is real, but they do not selectively hunt down bad bacteria and leave everything else untouched. They shift the environment, subtly, which means their real power is not in destroying, but in changing conditions, and that is a very different mechanism than what most viral content suggests. So if you've been thinking that the solution to your gut issues is to find the right supplement or the right combination of ingredients, and everything will suddenly reset, I need you to understand this. The solution is not a product, it is a process. And once you see your gut that way, as a system that responds to what you do every day, not what you take occasionally, that's when real change becomes possible. So here's the shift most people never make. You've been thinking the problem is that your body is missing something. Not enough good bacteria, not enough supplements, not enough support. But what if that's not the real issue at all? What if the problem isn't what you're lacking, but what your body is constantly being exposed to? Because your gut doesn't just respond to what you add, it responds to the environment you create every single day. And if that environment is off, nothing you add will stick. Think of it this way. You can plant the healthiest seeds in the world, but if the soil is dry, inflamed, unbalanced, those seeds don't grow, not because they're weak, but because the environment won't allow it. And that's exactly what happens inside your gut. It's not that probiotics don't work, it's that they're being introduced into a system that isn't ready to support them. A system shaped by years of diet, stress, sleep, medications, all quietly influencing what thrives and what doesn't. So the real turning point isn't finding something new to take. It's realizing that your gut is responding to patterns, not products. And once you understand that, you stop chasing quick fixes and you start asking a different question. Not what can I add to fix this, but what do I need to change so my body can fix this on its own? So now we get to the part most people are waiting for. Solution isn't just adding more probiotics. If it's not about flushing your gut, then what actually helps shift that environment back into balance? And this is where things get interesting, because the answer isn't hidden in some expensive supplement. It's not something you need to order online. In fact, parts of it have probably been sitting in your kitchen this entire time, not as a cure, not as a miracle, but as tools, simple compounds that, when used consistently, can begin to change the conditions inside your gut, not by force, but by influence. Spices. Now, before you dismiss that as too simple, stay with me. Because this isn't about old home remedies or internet trends. There are compounds inside certain spices that interact directly with your digestive system. They don't clean your gut, they don't wipe bacteria out. What they do is far more subtle and far more important. They shift the environment. Take turmeric, for example. The active compound, curcumin, has been studied for its anti-inflammatory effects, not just in joints, but in the gut lining itself. When inflammation is reduced, your gut barrier becomes more stable, less reactive, more selective, which means the environment becomes less chaotic. Then there's ginger. Most people think of it for nausea, but what it actually does is stimulate movement in your digestive tract. It helps your gut do what it's supposed to do, move things forward. Because when digestion slows down, bacteria have more time to ferment, to build up, to create discomfort. Movement matters more than most people realize. Garlic, often called natural antibiotic, but that's a simplification. What matters is that it contains sulfur compounds that can influence microbial activity, not wipe it out, but shift it. And then cinnamon. Less talked about in gut health, but it plays a role in metabolic regulation, which matters, because your gut and your metabolism are deeply connected. None of these work in isolation. None of them are magic. But together, they begin to change the tone of the environment inside your body. Less inflammatory, more stable, more supportive. And that's the key, because once the environment starts to shift, everything else becomes easier. Digestion improves. Bloating decreases. Energy begins to stabilize. Not overnight, not dramatically, but noticeably. And here's what most people miss. It's not about taking all of these at once. It's about understanding what they're actually doing. They're not fixing your gut. They're helping your gut fix itself. And that distinction is everything, because once you stop looking for something to attack the problem and start focusing on creating the right conditions, that's when your body finally has the space to rebalance. And in the next part, I'm going to show you exactly how that works. On a deeper level, not the hype, not the shortcuts, but the actual mechanisms inside your body that determine whether your gut heals or stays stuck. To really understand what's happening inside your gut, we need to step back for a moment, because most people imagine digestion as something simple. You eat food, your body breaks it down. You absorb nutrients. End of story. But that's not what's actually happening. Inside your gut, there is an entire ecosystem, trillions of microorganisms, different species, different roles, constantly interacting. Some help break down food, some produce vitamins, some regulate inflammation, some even communicate directly with your brain. And all of them are influenced by one thing above everything else: the environment they live in. This is why the idea of just adding good bacteria is incomplete. Because bacteria don't exist in isolation, they respond to conditions. Think about oxygen, temperature, nutrients, pH levels. Change those and you change which organisms survive. Your gut works the same way. When your diet is balanced, when inflammation is low, when your digestive system is moving efficiently, your gut environment supports diversity. Different species can coexist. They keep each other in check. That's what balance actually looks like. But when that environment shifts, everything changes. If inflammation increases, your gut lining becomes more reactive, more sensitive, less stable. The barrier that's supposed to protect you starts to weaken. At the same time, if digestion slows down, food sits longer in your gut, and that creates an opportunity. Certain bacteria thrive in that kind of environment. They ferment more, produce more gas, create more byproducts. And those byproducts can further irritate your gut lining. Now you have a loop. Inflammation feeds imbalance. Imbalance feeds more inflammation. And this loop doesn't stop on its own. That's why symptoms start to stack. Bloating, discomfort, irregular digestion, and eventually effects beyond the gut, because your immune system is closely tied to what's happening there. Now let's address something important. The idea that you can reset this entire system in 24 hours, that you can drink something, take something, and suddenly everything goes back to normal. That sounds appealing. Makes sense, because your microbiome is not a switch. It's a dynamic system that adapts over time. It responds to repeated signals, patterns, not single events. You don't develop imbalance overnight, and you don't reverse it overnight either. Even when you introduce something beneficial, like anti-inflammatory compounds or supportive foods, what you're doing is not flipping a switch. You're shifting conditions, gradually, and when those conditions change, some bacteria become less dominant. Others begin to grow. Diversity slowly returns. But this takes consistency, not intensity. And this is where those spices we talked about earlier come into play. Not as weapons, but as signals. Curcumin from turmeric, for example, helps reduce inflammatory signaling in the gut. Less inflammation means a more stable environment. Ginger supports motility, which reduces the amount of time unwanted fermentation can happen. Garlic and similar compounds can influence microbial balance, but again, not by wiping everything out, by nudging the system. And when multiple small factors begin to align, inflammation decreases, barrier function improves, movement becomes more regular, and the environment starts to shift back toward balance. That's when people begin to notice changes, not because something was cleansed, but because the system is no longer under constant stress. And this is the key idea I want you to take with you. Your gut doesn't need to be forced into balance. It needs to be allowed to return to it. And that only happens when the conditions support it. There was a man I spoke to not long ago, early 60s, still active, still working, the kind of person who takes pride in doing things right. He had been dealing with gut issues for years. Nothing dramatic, just constant discomfort, bloating after meals, a stomach that never quite felt settled, days where everything seemed fine, followed by days where nothing made sense. So he did what most people do. He started taking probiotics every morning, without fail. He switched brands, tried higher doses, read labels, paid more for better quality, and for a while, he thought he noticed a difference. But it never lasted. The symptoms always came back. And over time, something changed. It wasn't just the discomfort anymore. It was the frustration. Because now it felt like he was doing everything he was supposed to do, and still getting the same result. At one point, he said something that stuck with me. I feel like my body just isn't responding anymore. And that's the moment where the conversation shifted. Not toward a new supplement, not toward a stronger dose, but toward something much simpler. We looked at his patterns, what he was eating consistently, how fast he was eating, his sleep, his stress, even how often he actually gave his body time to rest between meals. And then we made small changes, not extreme ones. He slowed down his meals, added simple things like ginger and cooked foods that were easier to digest, reduced the constant snacking, focused on consistency instead of intensity. No gut reset, no dramatic protocol, just adjustments to the environment his body was living in every day. And over the next few weeks, things began to shift. Not overnight, but steadily. The bloating became less frequent. His stomach felt calmer, more predictable. And the most important change? He stopped feeling like his body was working against him. Because it wasn't. It just needed the right conditions to work with him again. Now I want to say something that might not be comfortable to hear. If you're looking for something you can take for 3 days and suddenly fix your gut, this is where I'm saying this so directly, is because this is where a lot of people get stuck. They jump from one solution to another, one supplement, one trend, one miracle protocol, always hoping the next thing will be the one that finally works. But your body doesn't respond to shortcuts. It responds to patterns. And if those patterns don't change, nothing else really does either. There's also something else you need to be aware of. Just because something is natural doesn't mean it's harmless. Certain compounds, especially in concentrated forms, can interact with medications. They can irritate your stomach. They can affect your liver, your blood pressure, even how your body processes other treatments. And this is especially important if you're over 50 or managing any existing health condition. So before you start adding multiple things at once, pause, simplify. Pay attention to how your body actually responds, because more is not always better, and trying to force change too quickly often backfires. The goal here isn't to overwhelm your system, it's to support it, and that requires patience, consistency, and a willingness to move away from the idea that your body needs to be fixed immediately. Because the truth is, your body is already trying to fix itself. It just needs the right conditions to do it. So maybe the real shift isn't about finding the perfect solution. Maybe it's about finally understanding what your body has been trying to tell you all along. Because for a long time, you thought something inside you was broken, that your digestion was failing, that your body just wasn't responding the way it used to. But what if that's not true? What if your body never stopped working for you? It just adapted to everything you gave it. Every rushed meal, every night of poor sleep, every period of stress you carried without realizing how deeply it affected you. Your body adjusted, it compensated, it did the best it could with the conditions it was given. And the symptoms you feel now, they're not random, they're feedback, signals, a quiet way of saying something needs to change, not all at once, not dramatically, but consistently. Because healing doesn't happen in a single moment. It happens in patterns, in small decisions repeated over time. What you choose to eat, how you give your body time to rest, how you support it instead of pushing it. And when those patterns begin to shift, your body responds, not instantly, but reliably. The bloating starts to fade, your energy becomes more stable, that constant tension in your stomach begins to let go. And for the first time in a long time, you feel like your body is working with you again, not against you. So if you take anything from this, let it be this. You don't need to fight your gut. You don't need to clean it or force it into balance. You need to create the conditions where balance can return, because your body already knows how to heal. It always has. The question is, will you finally give it the chance to?